All right, welcome to our latest explainer. Today, we're breaking down the World Economic Forum's new report on our digital world. We're going to dig into why keeping ourselves safe online is getting harder than ever.
So right at the top, the report asks this massive question. And listen, this isn't just for the tech folks, it's the big challenge that shapes this entire conversation, signaling a huge shift in how we need to think about cybersecurity.
I mean, how bad is it really? Well, this number kind of says it all. A whopping 72% of organizations say their cyber risks went up in the last year alone. That's not a small trend. That's a giant wave that almost everyone is feeling.
But here's the thing. The real story isn't just that things are getting worse. It's that the whole game is changing. We're leaving behind a world of kind of predictable attacks and entering a brand new era, one defined by just overwhelming, chaotic complexity.
Okay, so let's get into it. What exactly do they mean by complexity? And, what's behind this new, much tougher reality for all of us?
Now, cyber complexity might sound like some corporate jargon, but it's not. The best way to think about it is like a perfect storm. It's not just one problem, it's a bunch of different forces all crashing together at once, creating a security environment that's almost impossible to see through, let alone navigate safely.
And these are the 5 big drivers fueling that storm. But the crazy part is how they all tangle together. Rising geopolitical tensions mess up global supply chains. The super-fast AI arms race needs skills that we just don't have enough people for. And all the different rules around the world make a unified defense practically impossible. It's a problem that's way bigger than the sum of its parts.
Okay, so this whole mess of complexity, well, it doesn't hit everyone the same way. In fact, what the report is showing us is this huge and growing gap between the cyber haves and the have-nots.
And wow, this chart just lays it all out, doesn't it? Just check out these numbers. 35% of small organizations feel like they just can't keep up with cyber threats. For the big companies, it's only 7%. The little guys are getting left dangerously behind.
And it's not just about big companies versus small ones. This is a global thing too. You've got places like Europe and North America, where only about 15% of leaders lack confidence in their country's defenses. But then you look at Africa, and that number jumps to 36%. And in Latin America, it's a really worrying 42%.
So where does all this lead? Well, it's a tipping point, a real crisis. Cyber leaders are basically screaming from the rooftops that the vast majority of small organizations, the backbone of our economy, might have already passed the point of no return. They just can't protect themselves anymore. And that's just not sustainable.
And that brings us to maybe the single biggest gas pedal on all this complexity and inequality: artificial intelligence.
When they ask leaders, hey, what's the one piece of tech that's going to change cybersecurity the most in the next year? The answer was a landslide. 2/3 pointed right at AI and machine learning. Not the cloud, not quantum computing, it's all about AI.
But, and this is a huge but, there's a massive paradox here. Pretty much everyone agrees AI is the big, scary thing on the horizon. But then you look at the other side. Only 37% of organizations actually have a process to check if the AI tools they're bringing in are even secure. It's this giant gap between knowing there's a problem and actually doing something about it.
And that gap, that's what's truly terrifying. Because generative AI is like a superweapon for the bad guys. It makes old-school phishing scams incredibly personal and automated. It can create deepfake videos and voices that are good enough to fool almost anyone. Basically, it's making cybercrime way easier, way cheaper, and a whole lot more powerful.
Okay, so let's zoom out for a second. Because in the world we live in now, where everything's connected, these threats don't happen in a bubble. One little weakness, whether it's from an AI tool or a small supplier, can set off a domino effect across the whole system. This quote really hits the nail on the head. Think about it. Attackers just have to get lucky once. They only need to find one little crack. Defenders? They have to be perfect all the time, protecting every single weak spot. It's a completely lopsided battle.
Okay, now this is really interesting. You ask these organizations what keeps them up at night, and yeah, everyone's worried about the complex threats. But look at the difference here. For the big guys, their number one headache is managing the risk coming from their partners and suppliers. Meanwhile, smaller orgs are still fighting more basic battles, like just finding people with the right skills.
And get this stat, it really drives the point home. More than half, 54% of these big companies are saying their supply chain is the single biggest roadblock to being secure. That's a huge vulnerability, right? You can build a fortress, but if one of your partners leaves the back door open, it's all for nothing.
So you add all this up, the complexity, the inequality, the interconnected risks, and what do you get? The report's conclusion is pretty clear. Doing more of the same old thing just isn't going to cut it anymore. We need a totally new way of thinking about digital security.
And this right here, this is the big shift in thinking we need. It's about moving from seeing cybersecurity as just another IT cost to seeing it for what it is, a core, strategic investment in our economy. And it's about shifting from only worrying about our own walls to building strength across the entire ecosystem that we all share.
And that really leaves us with one last big question. Because what this report really hammers home is that risk is now shared risk. A breach at some small company can bring down a global giant. So in a world like that, the question really becomes, can any of us truly afford to go it alone?